Hey everyone, one of my viewers commented asking whether I could do commentary on a full random battle. And I thought that was a pretty good idea myself, so here it is. Let's analyze our team and the matchup here. The main things I look out for in my 6 Pokemon lineup is whether I have any hazard setters, stealth rocks, sticky webs, that sort of stuff. Because if you do, your priority is to get them in as quickly as possible. In this game, there's none of that. The next thing I look out for are setup sweepers. Pokemon with boosting moves that can potentially bring their stats to absurd levels and then, one-hit KO the entire enemy team. For that, we have quite a few this game. Garchomp with Swords Dance, Butterfree with Quiver Dance, and Malamar. So it is quite important to be aware that I will most likely eventually Dynamax one of these 3 Pokemon if I manage to successfully set up my boosting move. Finally, we look at the lead matchup. We are playing Mr. Fish versus our opponent's Stone Journer. We are slower than our opponent, however, we have the type advantage, water versus rock. I'm fairly confident that the opponent's Stone Journer doesn't have an offensive move that can kill my Mr. Fish in one hit. So I'm going to stay in, and there's no reason for me not to go for a Fish's Rend here. That's Mr. Fish's signature move, which is a lose-lose situation for my opponent. Either they take a super effective water type hit, or they perform a switch, and that doubles Fish's Rend's power anyway. Very unfortunately for me here, my opponent does have the perfect Fish's Rend switch in Toxicroak, which has the dry skin ability, completely absorbing my Fish's Rend. So because we are choice banded on Mr. Fish, we are basically forced to switch out as our move that we are locked into does no damage. We are expecting a fighting type or a poison type move from the Toxicroak, so I decided to switch into my Butterfree here. It resists the fighting type move, and it doesn't get hit super effective by the poison type move. So that seems like a good switch in here. And the Toxicroak reveals Swords Dance, which is quite scary. So the idea here is I click Quiver Dance. This allows me to then outspeed the Toxicroak next turn so that I can go for an Air Slash that will definitely kill it since it is a super effective move. As it turns out, Butterfree's physical defenses are paper thin, so I die in one hit. That was a mistake. In hindsight, I should have swapped into Garchomp instead, which has much better physical defense, while threatening the KO against Toxicroak with the super effective Earthquake move. So that's exactly what I do. I click Earthquake here. Normally I would prefer to Swords Dance up with Garchomp. As mentioned earlier, this is one of my setup sweepers. Unfortunately, in this situation against a 2x attack Toxicroak, you have to go on the offense. As it turns out, Swords Dance would have been the right move because my opponent clicked Sucker Punch, which would have failed if I decided to set up instead of attacking. So that's my loss. Instead of getting an attack boost, I am receiving 50% damage just to kill this Toxicroak. So as it stands, my opponent has lost 1 Pokemon, I've lost 1.5. My Garchomp is at half health. So my opponent has the upper hand in this game. They bring out their Drifblim here, and Drifblim is an incredibly scary Pokemon because it has the potential to deal with both physical and special attackers. Against special attackers, it has Calm Mind, which boosts its special defense, and against physical attackers, it has Strength Sap, a powerful move that keeps Drifblim alive and healthy while simultaneously reducing the physical damage output from the opponent. Thankfully, we have a good counter to that. Swords Dance allows me to boost my Garchomp's attack so that even if my opponent goes for Strength Sap, I will still come out ahead as Swords Dance boosts my attack by 2, while Strength Sap reduces my attack by 1. I'm also fairly confident that I will survive a hit from the enemy Drifblim if it decides to go for an attack. I don't think it gets any super effective moves that can hit my Garchomp here. So with my super effective Stone Edge getting a one-hit KO, I'm now back in contention. They got the one-hit KO on my Butterfree, I got the one-hit KO on the Drifblim. They send out their Keldeo, and that is a Pokemon that can use water-type moves, so I switch in my Dracovish here, which heavily resists water-type attacks. Makes sense. The other reason to do so is that I'm aware my Dracovish carries Psychic Fangs, which is a powerful psychic attack that will probably one-shot the Keldeo. Anticipating this, my opponent smartly switches out into Haxorus, a very risky switch-in, knowing that I could potentially drop a dragon move on them. Even Fish's Rend would do a healthy amount of damage. But yeah, my opponent called that perfectly and got their Haxorus in, which is a faster Pokemon that can threaten a one-hit KO on my Dracofish. That is simply not acceptable, so I'm forced to switch it out here into something that can take the Haxorus better. Thankfully, I have options. I am specifically looking at Heatran here, which is a steel type that resists dragon type attacks like Outrage. It is 4 times weak to Earthquake, which Haxorus could carry. However, it comes with the air balloon, so an Earthquake would not hit me at all. So I was prepared for the dragon type move and the ground type move, but I did not expect the close combat. Fighting type move, super effective, one-shots my Heatran. I'm forced to bring in Garchomp here, who can now perform an Outrage. However, I completely forgot that my opponent Haxorus set up a Dragon Dance already, meaning that it now outspeeds me and is able to smack my Garchomp into the ground. That really put me on the back foot here. That Haxorus is looking unstoppable. Until I realized that they are locked into Outrage because they just used it against my Garchomp. So they have to use it next turn, which means that I can freely swap in to my other Steel-type Pokemon in Dugtrio. A Lowland Dugtrio has the Steel-type, which means it resists the Outrage, and thankfully it survives the Outrage with a sliver of HP. I am then able to break down my opponent's Haxorus after 2 Sucker Punches. That was a lot of work for such a powerful enemy Pokemon, but we managed it. It was quite risky because my opponent could have Dragon Danced on me, again, nullifying the Sucker Punch, which only hits if my opponent selects a move. However, with them being so low and the defenses reduced, they were basically forced to die to Sucker Punch or switch out to another Pokemon, which might have a worse matchup versus my Dugtrio. Now, Keldeo comes out here, and I obviously switch into my Dracovish here, which resists Keldeo pretty well. Unfortunately, my opponent knows this, and so instead of going for Scald, they go for Secret Sword, which 3-hit KOs me. I attempt to Psychic Fangs here, but to my horror, my absolute horror, it does not pick up the 1-hit KO. Not powerful enough even with the Choice Band. So as a result, the opposing Keldeo beats my Mr. Fish in the head-to-head, and I'm forced to bring out my trump card, Malamar. Not that I have a choice, it's my only healthy Pokemon left. I am able to set up on my opponent while killing it with Superpower. So that's the signature combo of Malamar in random battles. Superpower is normally a detrimental move as it reduces your attack and defense stats after using it. However, because of Malamar's ability, Contrary, which inverts stat changes, those defense and attack reductions instead become defense and attack increases. So essentially, you're launching an attack and boosting your stats at the same time. This actually makes Superpower more potent than max moves such as G-Max Knuckle and G-Max Steel Spike, because it gives you 2 stat boosts while still doing ridiculous amounts of damage. This is why I chose to not Dynamax my Malamar here, even though it would double my HP. I wanted to use the Superpower for the stat boosts. So the final showdown here is between my Malamar and my opponent's Boltund. We have the physical attack and physical defense advantage thanks to the Superpower boost earlier. However, our opponent has the speed advantage and they also have the hit point advantage. Our Malamar is slightly damaged here. We both Dynamax because I desperately need to keep my Malamar alive. And I go for the max Psychic move here, which overrides my opponent's electric terrain set up by their max Lightning. So that was a huge play because otherwise I would have taken extra damage had I not overrode my opponent's electric terrain. And as it turns out, I'm dealing more damage to my opponent than they are doing to me. So I win the head-to-head, and now I am facing up against the Stonejourner, which is an easy matchup because I have a fighting type move against their rock type Pokemon. Except that that's not very true. We instinctively always pick the most super effective move, but in this case, Max Mindstorm, the psychic type attack, is actually better. It has higher base power than Max Knuckle. If there's something you should know about Max moves, is that Max Poison and Max Fighting moves have lower power than their other type counterparts to balance the fact that they boost your attack and special attack stats. Besides that, Max Mindstorm gains extra damage from Psychic Terrain as well as same type attack bonus. Don't forget that Malamar is not a fighting type Pokemon, it's Psychic Dark. So Psychic and Dark attacks are actually more optimal for Malamar. The most important part that I completely forgot about is that Max Knuckle increases your attack stat normally. But because of Malamar's contrary ability, it's a double-edged sword because now by using Max Knuckle, it decreases my attack stat. So this wouldn't be a problem had Max Knuckle one-hit KO'd the enemy Stone Journer. But despite being super effective, it did not pick up the one-hit kill. So yeah, this was a potentially fatal mistake here. A crucial misplay that almost cost me the game. My opponent kills my Malamar and then dies to their own life orb damage. I would have lost here because my opponent carried out the final attack, but because my opponent had no Pokemon left in the reserve and I still conserved my Alolan Dugtrio from earlier on in the game with a sliver of HP. So yeah, that's a victory for me, but a very close one. I definitely made some misplays that would have made this a cleaner victory, but there you go. That's a showcase of the random battle. It took quite a bit of effort to make with all the overlays. Did you find them useful? I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave some comments and suggestions in the comment section, and I'll see you the next time. Goodbye.